Hi guys, this is Gore. I'm back to do another ELA lesson with you, and I'm outside. It's a little dark, me sitting here, but we'll be all right. At least you can hear me. So I wanted to start out with a question that I'm just going to throw out there, and that is, what possibly in your education do you study that really just is so unique to you, to yourself? There's no right or wrong answer to it. It's just unique to you. Can you think of anything in your education that really fits in that category? Because that's what I'm going to talk about today, and I think it's kind of exciting because we get to decide. We get to decide when it comes to this topic. So, when you're reading a book, do you ever feel like you probably interpret that book a little differently than someone else might? Have you ever watched a movie even and had a different idea about what the movie was about than what someone else thought? Can you think of anything that you've done in your literature classes, English classes, that has that kind of freedom? Because I think that's really exciting, that you have the freedom to interpret your own meaning. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So if you don't remember the actual terms, what we're talking about is connotation and denotation. And I'm sure you've heard those words before by now, and we're going to talk some more about them. So I really, they sound like scary big words, but what they really are is, connotation is just freedom. That's just pure freedom. And denotation, we're going to talk about that. So again, I'm Mrs. Gore, and let's dive right in. So the first question, besides the one I just asked you, is what do you remember about connotation and denotation? Do you remember anything about learning those in class? And what would that be? Just think for a moment. If you want to pause the video here, you can think and maybe write down some notes if you want to just remember what you remember about connotation and denotation. And then the other question is, on my first slide here, I have a dog and I have a chicken. Okay, and you're probably like, what does that have to do with what we're going to learn today? And that's my other question. What does a dog and a chicken have to do with what we're going to learn today? Any guesses? Any background knowledge that's helping you remember learning about either one of these words? Okay, let's go to the next slide. So our objectives for today, this is what we're going to be able to do when we are done with this lesson today. So the first one is here, and it says, I can explain in my own words what connotation is and create examples. Okay, we're going to be able to do that. And the second objective is, I can distinguish among connotations or associations of words with similar denotations. Okay, so you'll see what we're talking about by the time we get to the end of this. Okay, you're going to be like, yes, I can do that, totally. Okay, I remember, and now I'm refreshed. And if you have any trouble, there's always a lot more learning out there to really fine-tune your skills when it comes to connotation and denotation. Okay, and the one vocabulary word I want to go over is distinguish, just because it's kind of a big one. And it means to notice or recognize a difference between. So on this objective, I'm going to list that objective again because it uses the word distinguish in it. So I can distinguish among connotations or associations of words with similar denotations. So distinguish and being able to tell apart or recognize or notice a difference between, that's what we're going to be doing with these connotations by the end of the lesson. Okay. All right, so here's that chicken again. And I want you, behind me are my chickens. You probably can't see them, but they're way out there in that little chicken house, if you can see that. So we have a chicken here. And what I want you to do right now is go grab a piece of paper if you don't already have one, grab a pen or a pencil. You can pause the video at any time, so you can run and grab that stuff. And then we'll continue whenever you're ready. So I'll just pause for a moment while you do that. Okay, so we want to write down, I want you to write down or just think about some words that come to mind or that you associate with the word chicken. So think of the word chicken. Think of some things you associate with the word chicken. Just write as many down as you can think of. And again, pause the video if you would like to work on that for a moment. Okay, so here's my slide. Were some of those words that you wrote down, were they food, eat, eggs, coop, cluck, peck, feathers, or maybe cock-a-doodle-doo? Were any of those words the ones you wrote down when you thought of the word chicken? Those are the pretty common ones. Okay. So check what you've done so far, and we will move on to the rest. Okay. What about, these are my questions for you. Did you happen to write down the word coward, afraid, or nervous? Okay. Can you think of why we might have written those words down, or what would be the reason for writing those words down when we think of chicken? Okay, just think about that. Now let's think of or write down words we think of when we hear the word dog. And again, you can pause the video and write those words down. Just jot down as many as you can think of when you think of the word dog. If somebody said the word dog to you, what would you write down? Okay, so my slide about the dog is this one. Did you think of words like cute or animal or fluffy or furry or cuddly or fetch or playful or pet? Did you write down any of those words at all? What about words like this? What about the word cheater or scoundrel or unlikable? Most people don't think of those words when they think of the word dog. Maybe you did. Maybe you had those examples. But we're going to talk about why you might write down these negative sounding words when you think of the word chicken or when you think of the word dog. Why would you write down anything negative? How would that be? Let's go to the next slide. So we know that language is more than a dictionary or denotative meaning. Okay? Personal feelings are part of the connotative meaning. Cultural and environmental experiences play into our connotative or associative meanings of words. Okay? So I think that's really important. That's kind of our purpose today. It's kind of what's giving us the drive to learn this. Because language is more than just what does that word mean when we look it up in the dictionary, right? We want to know what do our experiences say about these words. Maybe we have a cultural connection to one of these words. So that is the great thing about language. It is just so, especially the English language, we have so many words that mean the same things, so many synonyms, and then we have antonyms that are complete opposites. And you know, our English language is pretty interesting to learn about. So there's our purpose for the day. Okay, trying to find the light for us. So I made this little chart to illustrate how this is broken down. So up here we would have a word, any word that we're trying to find the meaning of. Over here we would have the denotation, which is that dictionary meaning or that literal meaning. Okay, when someone says literally, a lot of people overuse that word these days, but the word literally means its actual definition. Okay, and then on the other side of this, we have this big chunk of words over here, and that has to do with the connotation. What we're kind of focusing on today is connotation, and that is that implied meaning, which means the opposite of literal meaning. Implied means this is what I think of when I hear this word. This is what I think this word means, right? We can use that text evidence or those context clues to kind of help us find that implied meaning. It's also audience specific, which means that only everybody in the audience is going to think of a different connotation for a word. That's just how it works. We're all different. We all have different experiences. We all have different lives, right? So it's audience specific. Connotation also has to do with our values and our emotions because it's very personal. So our connotative understanding of a word is very personal. It has to do with our values and our emotions. It also has to do with what we know from history, from our own history, from history as it's gone along. What does that word mean? And what is it historically meant to most people or everyone or the majority or maybe a certain group of people, right? So that's also something to remember with connotation. So feel free to pause the video and take this, write this chart down, this bubble graph down in your notes if you would like. It's pretty helpful way to remember connotation and denotation. Okay, so we're going to talk about some words. We're going to make these 3 lists, and these are going back to our pictures of the chicken and the dog. So what I have here is we have a positive connotation, which means that's good, right? Positive is good. We have a negative connotation, which means these words are negative or not so great. And then we have a neutral column because not all words fit into positive or negative. Sometimes they're just neutral. Neutral is like just, this is their meaning. This is what they are, right? So positive, we have those words that we wrote down under dog, like cute, fluffy, cuddly, and playful. Those are all very positive connotations for the word dog. And then we have negative connotations over here in this category, which have to do with the words like coward, afraid, nervous, cheater, scoundrel, unlikable. Those are all negative connotations, right? You don't want to be described that way. Nobody does. And then we have the words like that are neutral that we wrote down. These are the words we brainstormed, right? The words like food and eat, eggs, coop, cluck, peck, feathers, cock-a-doodle-doo, animal, furry, fetch, pet. Those are all neutral words. They have no negative or positive connotation. Okay? So that's just, I think, was a good visual for breaking down positive and negative and neutral. Another way to look at neutral connotation is that denotation. That's exactly what neutral means. That's exactly what it is, not our interpretation of it. Okay? So let's go to the next slide, and we're going to do an activity. So we're going to think of the word summer right now. And we're going to try an activity where I'll give you the word, and that is the word summer. I want you to write it down, and I want you to write down all the words that come to mind when you think of the word summer, and then we will discuss it. Just write the word summer at the top of your paper, and then go ahead and pause the video for 2 minutes or so, and just brainstorm all those words that make you think of summer. It could be any word that makes you think of summer. Okay? So go ahead and pause the video, and then we'll pick back up when you are ready. Okay, so I hope you had some time to write down those words about summer, and I wrote some words down as well. And I'm going to see if I can get this to where you can see my words. So this isn't the greatest, but I have words like hot, sweaty, cool, season. Season is one, I just, summer is a season, right? I have words like, let me try this a different way. I am so sorry. This just isn't letting me do what I want to do. I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen sharing for just a moment. And I'm going to go into this big screen where you can maybe see my words. Okay? And again, I'm still kind of in the shade. But those are my words. I have hot. I have ice cream. I have season. I have swim. I have pool. I have no school. And I have barbecue, right? Sweaty, hot. Okay? So that was the whole point of that exercise, was to have you just write down everything you think of when you think of summer. Okay? And so in doing that, I hope we had some of the same words. Maybe we had different words. What we're going to talk about now is those connotations that come with summer. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about, what about the word sweaty? Is that a positive or a negative connotation? What does that have when you think of summer and you think of the word sweaty? That's kind of a negative connotation, right? Ice cream, that's definitely a positive connotation, unless you don't like ice cream. Season. How about the word season? If you guys had season. Is that positive or negative? That one falls in that neutral category. It's just the denotation of the word summer is actually on our next slide. So I have the actual meaning of the word summer. Okay, so up here I have, so just like the word dog or chicken, summer also has connotations, some positive, some negative. Let's investigate those associations, which is what we're doing, right? The denotation for the word summer is the warmest season of the year in the northern hemisphere from June to August, southern hemisphere from December to February. So it's just the meaning, the literal dictionary meaning of summer is this down here, the denotation, okay? So season falls in that neutral category of just being its denotation, okay? Words like swim, definitely positive, unless you don't like swimming. No school, I think we talked about that one. That's a positive one, unless you miss school. I think we're all missing school a little bit right now. It's not our typical summer, so that one could be positive or negative. So that was just a fun activity with the word summer. Just that one word and how many ways you can look at that word. So let's go to this one. Now, I was talking earlier about how culture plays into what our connotations of a word are. So right here, we're going to talk about how connotations are both unique to an individual, but also to a culture of people. So these 5 statements or questions here and their answers are very cultural for our country. So people from other countries probably don't think of these things if they heard the same question. They would not associate these things together. So the first one is, which U.S. holiday is most associated with fireworks? The 4th of July, right? So do you think in a different country where they don't have Independence Day like we do, they didn't gain their independence on the 4th of July, 1776? They're not going to celebrate the 4th of July like we are with those fireworks, right? They may have fireworks for a different holiday. We have them for the 4th of July, right? So you see how that kind of works culturally. Which U.S. state is most known for potatoes? Maybe you've heard that throughout your life or heard references to Idaho potatoes. So if we live in the US, we know that's Idaho, right? Someone else may not know that, someone from a different country. Which US city is most known for gambling? Las Vegas, right? We all kind of are familiar with that idea. Which cities are best known for jazz music? Now that's something that not most people may not know, but someone who's into jazz is definitely going to know that. And most people in the US can at least make a good guess. It's probably, at least we know, New Orleans, Chicago, New York City. Those are all big hot spots for jazz. Where's the center of the government in the US? Washington, D.C., right? But if you ask somebody from another country, they may not know that. So you can see where connotations are very linked to your culture. If I say the 4th of July, what do you think of? Probably fireworks first, right? Maybe barbecues, get-togethers, flags, right? So those connotations. So that's another way of looking at connotations. So now this little activity, I would like if you would write these words down, and we're going to try to make a guess. We're going to try to guess whether we think these are positive or negative. Now, all of these words is getting to the focus of our assignment today or our lesson. So we're talking more about connotations specifically. And so if we see these words that are listed here, there's 6 words going down in a column. If we see those 6 words, can we just by looking at them tell if they are a positive or negative? Do they have a positive connotation or a negative connotation? What do you guys think about that first column? Funny, amusing, witty, silly, hysterical, and delirious. They all mean the same thing. They all mean, virtually the same thing. Do you think any of those words just scream positive or negative? Let's take a look. Okay, so the word funny is a positive. Amusing would be positive. Witty would be positive, right? Those are uplifting words. Now, if we get into the word silly, if you call someone silly, would they necessarily like that? It could be a negative. It could be really negative to refer to someone as silly, because sometimes the word silly could mean unintelligent, um, goofy, just may not be a positive association. So what about the word hysterical? Why do you think we have a negative next to the word hysterical? Because I can think of someone who's hysterical as being they're so funny, right? But there's another meaning of the word hysterical. And that could mean that you're just really freaking out, right? Which is not a great painting someone in a good light if you say they're hysterical. That means they are just freaking out. The word delirious, that could be a word to describe a funny person, or funny laughter and things. But the word delirious isn't as positive as a word like amusing or witty, right? Do you see how that positive, negative works? So let's do another column of very similar words. You guys can, of course, pause the video and take as much time as you want if you want to write these down. If you want to copy any of these two columns down, be my guest. So in the second column, we have words like confident, self-assured, assertive, bossy, arrogant, and prideful. So if you guys want to pause and take a moment and see if you can guess whether these have a positive or negative connotation. What are your thoughts? Okay, so I hope you've had a second to look those over. I'm going to go ahead and click and give you the answers. Okay, so it's kind of like the one before it. These first three right here are all very positive adjectives you could use to describe somebody, right? Confident, self-assured, and assertive. But now if you get down into these second three words, or the second half of the list, I'm sorry, the three words at the bottom, these have a more negative tone. If you describe someone as bossy, arrogant, or prideful, it's not as positive as you would hope. So I hope that those help you to see that connection between positive and negative connotation. Okay, let's move on. So another part of our purpose today is that writers use all forms of words and their meanings to create better word choice and ignite emotional reactions in their readers. So if you're writing something, if you're the writer, you want to be able to choose the best word possible. I know I've mentioned before thesaurus. A thesaurus is a great tool to look up that word that you're thinking of, but see if there's other words that are just better, okay? And have a more positive, or maybe you're going for that negative connotation, which is fine. Not always are the words positive. Sometimes an author chooses a certain word because it is negative, and it creates that negative emotion that you want, okay? So we're going to look at some examples here and do an activity with our understanding of that, what I just talked about, okay? So we're going to move to the next slide. Okay, so to go on to those, the slides after this one, kind of digging a little deeper, we're going to apply our knowledge now, okay, about connotations and choose the best word. Okay, I love activities like this because we have to choose the best word for the passage. This one is going to be our example. We're going to talk through it together, okay? So for instance, some people might be described as skinny, okay? The word skinny, we're thinking of skinny. Do you think this word has a positive or a negative connotation? Or do you think it's simply neutral? What do you think when you hear the word skinny? And again, this is going to go back to that not everybody has the same thoughts or thinks of the same connotation as another person, right? So down here where my pointer is, We're going to read skinny is negative and suggests weakness or bad health, right? So both of those things are negative, weakness or bad health. Okay, let's go on down. So thin, the word thin may be a better word. It is more neutral. So if you describe someone as thin rather than skinny, that's better, right? That's a better choice. But if we go on down to the third row down here, a better word might be slender, okay? I've heard women especially that don't care to be called skinny or even thin. So a word like slender basically means thin, but it creates this more graceful and beautiful image, right? Than just saying, oh, she's skinny or she's thin. If you say she's slender, that's really a lot more flattering when you're talking about a person's build, right? So that's our example that we're going to use to move into the next couple of slides where we're going to do some activities. This is where you'll need your paper. Okay, so we have the first activity is for us to choose the best word to complete the statement. So we're going to choose between the words old and elderly. Okay, so let's read this passage and see what we think. And I'd like you to write it down, pause the video, whatever you want to do, so that you can really, this is kind of our test, our assessment at the end, okay? So let's read through it together and see what we think. It's not polite to call someone blank. It's better to speak of him or her as an blank person. So what do you think? Which word goes where? I'll give you a few moments and then we'll check our knowledge. Okay, so for this first one, let's read it again. It's not polite to call someone old, right? That's not a very positive word. It's better to speak of him or her as an elderly person. That's more respectful and more positive. Okay, did you guys think the same? Did you put the same words in the same spot? And if not, now we know. Now we know how to make that better word choice, right? So I'll move to the next slide. And we're going to talk about the words hard and challenging. Okay, so this passage, let's read it together, and then we will think about the word choice. Owen may quit his job. He's bored at work and wants to find something more blank. He thinks with his skills, it won't be too blank to find a new job. Okay, again, pause the video if you'd like. Take your time, pick your words, and then we'll check our understanding. Okay, so now we will go to the next slide and check our understanding of this passage. So let's read it again together. Owen may quit his job. He's bored at work and wants to find something more challenging, right? If we said he wants to find something more hard, that doesn't make sense, right? So he wants to find something more challenging, okay? He thinks with his skills, it won't be too hard to find a new job. So you see where the emphasis is on those words? So challenging is a positive word. We want to be challenged, right? Some people hear the word challenging, they think it's a bad thing, but challenge is really a good thing. But when something's too hard, that's kind of a negative, undertone to it, okay? So there's another little piece that if you'd like to copy down, go right ahead, pause, and then start back when you're ready. And we'll go to our final slide and our final assessment of our connotations. So we're going to choose worried or concerned for this passage, okay, this statement. Let's read it together and then we'll check our knowledge. I forgot to tell my roommate I'd be out all night. She left 3 messages on my cell phone. In the first, she simply sounded blank, but by the third message, she was definitely blank. I think she was ready to call the police and have them start a search for me. Okay? This one's a little trickier, but let's see if we can put worried or concerned in the right spot. So one goes in one spot, one goes in the other. So pause the video if you need. Go ahead and take your time and think about which word goes where. And then we'll check our knowledge. Okay, so now we're going to check those passages. Let's read that first line together. I forgot to tell my roommate I'd be out all night. She left 3 messages on my cell phone. In the first, she simply sounded concerned, but by the 3rd message, she was definitely worried. I think she was ready to call the police and have them start a search for me. So do you see how those words, they mean the same thing? Concerned and worried, they mean the same thing. But they would be synonyms. But the difference is the connotation. So when you hear the word concerned, that just means somebody's really like, oh man, I hope that person's okay. I haven't heard from them. Getting a little concerned, right? Maybe I should try to call him. I did try to call him. I tried to call him a 2nd time. I'm getting concerned. Well, now by the 3rd message, what are you now? Worried, right? You are completely worried about that person. And you are trying to track them down because you're worried about their safety. So you see how word choice makes such a difference, just even in like the same statement, the same passage. When feelings change and emotions change, those connotations change as well. They get more intensified. So I hope that was a good example. Those 3 examples, like I said, pause, rewind, write those in your notebooks, whatever you would like to take from this lesson. And then we will just check our knowledge again. Did we meet our objectives today? What do you guys think? Let's read it again, okay? Let's read that first objective together. I can explain in my own words what connotation is and create examples. Okay, so remember back to our chicken example, our dog example, our summertime example. Okay, those are all examples of connotation. You can also think of synonyms as different connotations of the same meaning. And if you can write what a connotation is in your own words, you have met this objective today. And then the second objective we have over here, I can distinguish among connotations or associations of words with similar denotations. So we talked about those. So the words like worried and concerned, right? Hard and challenging, and old and elderly. We talked about how they mean the same thing, but the connotations are very, very different. So if you did well on that activity or those activities, and you feel like you've learned exactly what that means to distinguish between the connotations, then you've met the second objective. So good work today, you guys. We'll talk some more about this stuff, and we'll have another fun lesson for you tomorrow. So have a great afternoon and take care.